Question number 2, Craig Foss.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and reads, what reports has he received on the economic outlook and the government's financial position?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, today the government released the half-year update and the government's first investment statement. These documents show that economic growth will be steady and improvement in the government's fiscal position, though the fiscal position this year is worse than was expected at the budget 2010. The figures confirm that the events of the past 6 months, particularly the Canterbury earthquake and more subdued domestic recovery, have taken this year's deficit to the outer limits of what is acceptable to the government. However, we remain on track to achieve surpluses by 2015-16 as expected in the budget.
Supplementary. Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what is New Zealand's main challenge as identified in the half-year update?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, unquestionably our most significant challenge is to reduce the vulnerability to overseas financial markets caused by the extent of our overseas lending. So our main challenge is to increase national savings. The government can play a role by producing more saving and less borrowing, and we can also encourage New Zealanders to lock in their change in habits over the last couple of years, which have been indicated quite a dramatic shift to spending less and saving more. The government will be hearing from the Savings Working Group that it set up 6 months ago early in the new year, and we'll be considering decisions then.
Supplementary.
Craig Foss.
To the Minister, how will Budget 2011 take further steps to address the issues highlighted in today's economic update?
Mr Speaker,
the Honourable Bill English.
The Budget 2011 will lock in a reasonably sharp improvement from the significant deficit this year. In fact, the forecasts today show we would expect the government deficit to halve in Budget 2011, reducing around to 2.8% of GDP. We'll also be pressing on with our 6-point economic program, including extensive investment in infrastructure, increasing the efficiency of the public sector, supporting business with innovation and trade. We'll also be considering work from the Welfare Working Group, the Housing Shareholders Advisory Group, and we'll be publishing the second National Infrastructure Plan.
Craig Foss.
Supplementary. To the Minister, what does the government's first investment statement show?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the government's first investment statement shows the extent of assets owned by New Zealand taxpayers, for which New Zealand taxpayers have funded through their PAYE, paying their power bills and their petrol tax and road user charges. The Crown owns $223 billion of assets. It is by far the largest owner of assets in the country, around 5 times the size of the New Zealand Stock Exchange. By 2015, it expects that those assets will grow by $33 billion, which includes investment in schools, hospitals, broadband, electricity generation, roads, extensive rail investment and accumulating financial assets. We owe it to taxpayers to manage this very large resource much better than it has been managed in the past.
Craig Foss.
Supplementary. To the Minister, how do today's economic projections compare with those of other forecasters?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, this morning NZIER released the consensus forecasts, which are on the whole very similar to those of Treasury. They show growth of about 2.1% this year, rising to 3.5% next year. Probably more importantly, they show unemployment falling steadily to 5% over the next couple of years, and also accelerating wage growth to around 3% in 2012-13, comfortably ahead of inflation.
Question number 3, the Honourable Pete Hodson.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the